All right, everybody. It's Regan here with your podcast for the day and Never Stop Healing. And today we've got some really fun things to cover. So you're not going to want to miss this, especially if you've got any entrepreneurialism in your blood, in your soul. You know, if you've had the calling, you can't help it. Or if you have, some kids or grandkids that are entrepreneurs, they're going to want to hear this. And before we jump in and before I introduce my guest, last night's our Health Accelerator Challenge, we had a huge group and we had a really fun time. And the challenge for the week is to look at your recharge phase of care. And there's 6 essentials that we want you focusing on, and just choose one of those that you want to really master. And maybe it could be, we have love your liver tender. So maybe it's doing a protein fast once a week and having one day out of the week where you do more caloric restriction. It could be our exercise 300 to 600 minutes a week. You could even choose enjoyable activities. Find some activities you really love that really light you up and make you feel young and vibrant and healthy. Maybe that's yours, or maybe it's muscle building is age reversal medicine. So that's where you want to get 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. But really just, find one of those that you really want to master. And so that is the challenge of the week. But without further ado, I want to introduce a good friend of mine and also a member in our programs. But he is Charles Gaudet, and he's been an entrepreneur since the age of 4. He created his first multi-million-dollar business at 24. And what he's done is decided to help others do the same. He's the author of the Predictable Profits Playbook, the Entrepreneur's Guide to Dominating Any Market and Staying on Top. This has been voted #1 in sales and marketing by Indie Excellence. He's also an International Business Times. They called him the go-to business coach for 7- and 8-figure businesses, and perhaps the busiest sales coach in the US. Charles is regarded, Grit Daily says he's regarded in entrepreneurial circles as one of the top coaches for helping entrepreneurs surpass the 7- and 8-figure mark. So he's also known by Yahoo Finance as the CEO Whisperer. So Charles, welcome to the show. So good to have you.
Thank you, man. I'm going to have my kids listen to this introduction so that I get some cool points with them.
That's awesome. Well, and one of the things I wanted to jump into is you are a wrestler, an award-winning wrestler, and jiu-jitsu as well. So how does that relate to entrepreneurialism and health and life?
So a lot, actually. My freshman year in high school, I decided I was going to get into wrestling. And when I wrestled, I lost every match. I didn't even win a JV. I mean, I was JV the whole time, didn't even win a JV match. I had a complete losing record. My dad thought it was a safe bet. And he says, hey, kid, I tell you what, if you become a state champion by your senior year, I'll buy you a car. And I was like, oh, well, that's all I needed was that little bit of motivation. And so what I did is I decided I was going to wrestle all year round. And not only was I going to wrestle all year round, I was going to find people who are better than me. And so when everybody else in my high school and my competition, they trained during the winter months and with their high school team, what I did is after I trained with my high school team, I went out to the colleges and I said, hey, do you guys mind if I roll around with you? And I started rolling around the different colleges. Then I wanted to find out who's the best. And I found out Dan Gable is the best, won the Olympic gold medal without having a single point scored against him. And so I flew out to Iowa and I trained with Dan Gable, and I did that for a couple of years. And then by my junior year, I won my first state title. And then my senior year, I had 2 other state titles. So I got the state title in Greco-Roman and freestyle and in high school wrestling. And all of that ultimately came down to discipline, which is a big part of health, is being willing to just to be disciplined, to do what's necessary, even when it's uncomfortable. And on the flip side of the coin, I mean, the real reason, you see my background and how I wanted to get to state champion, so I hired the best. Well, the reason why I hired you is because through a number of other circles, when I said, look, I'm in my 40s now, I want peak mental performance, peak physical performance, the whole deal. I want to feel younger than I am, on paper. The roads kept pointing to you, which is why, you and I are even on this call today, because you're the best at what it is that you do. And so that's how it all tied in. The same thing, jujitsu. I trained with a guy number 8 in the world for his weight class, and it's just it's a great thing when you can work with people that know what they're talking about.
Yeah. Well, and the interesting thing that you've done is now you are a mentor to others. I mean, because there's so many entrepreneurs that struggle, and they make decisions that don't always lead to a great outcome. And what you do is you've said, well, hey, I've been there. I've struggled with that, just like you struggled with wrestling, right? I mean, you losing every match as a freshman. I wrestled 1 year and I was like, I'm never doing this again. My football, he talked me into it. And and I was just strong because I grew up on a farm, so I could just muscle guys down. But I got no pleasure in that sport, so I ended up back in basketball. But so I got a lot of respect for wrestlers, because cutting weight, and you just, discipline is the word I think of when I think of wrestlers. I'm like, they are the most disciplined athletes I know of. So that's amazing.
Well, actually, you talk about cutting weight, right? So I was only ever able to compete in one state championship junior year, because every other year I was out with health related issues. I lost 12 and 3/4 pounds overnight one night, and it created a havoc on my spleen and all this other stuff, which meant I couldn't compete. But things have changed, fortunately, in the decades that have followed. But what was considered healthy back then and what's healthy now, totally different things. I mean, for whatever crazy reason, people thought if you lose weight, you get to a lower weight class, and even if it's the most insane amount of weight, that you should be able to perform like a champion. But it was like, no, where's that disconnect, right? But you even see that like today in modern medicine, right? People, they'll take a pill and you'll feel young again, or you don't have to put down the pizza and whatnot. All you have to do is take this cholesterol pill, and you'll be fine. It's just common sense kind of gets tossed out the door sometimes when people actively decide that, and here's a decision: am I willing to do what it's going to take to win, or am I willing to do what's comfortable to get by?
Yeah.
And that there's two different type of decisions that people have to make. I mean, look, even going through your program, right? You've made the decisions easier for me, so I know exactly what I need to do. But you're not making it easy for me. I mean, you're telling me that I have to eat healthier, make healthier decisions. You're telling me I can't go out all night long and party and get hammered and expect top performance when I wake up in the morning. You tell me I can't watch TV or my iPad at night to fall asleep and use that as a mechanism. Like, you're building in habits that are not easy, but massively effective.
Yeah. But it gets easier once you do it. Once they're a habit, then
sure.
We're all I think Dan Sullivan, a mentor that you and I both share, Dan Sullivan says we're all 100% disciplined to our current set of habits. And so it's based on what your habits are, and that leads to the result in life. And a lot of times we never look back and reflect on what our behaviors are doing to our overall outcome in our health or in our businesses. So I want to dive a little deeper on mentorship, because what is it that, I mean, you had great mentors along the way. I really love and appreciate, and I'm honored, by what you said about me and being able to mentor you in your health journey. But what is it that drives you to want to mentor other people?
Well, I mean, I could give you the business version, or I could give you the honest version, right?
I think we all want the honest version. Tell us, what do you guys think? Honest,
I mean, because there's there's a whole big reason why I should tell you, but ultimately, the reason was, look, as a kid, I was a nice guy in school. I got picked on a lot. I was nobody's hero. If anything, I was just the easy target for the bullies. And eventually, especially when I got good at wrestling, all of a sudden the bullies decided I wasn't going to be their target anymore, right? So they chose somebody else. But I was still, not ever that person that was the stand out, so to speak, if you want to call it that. I did my own thing. I had friends, the whole deal, but I was, again, nobody's hero. It wasn't until I started doing really, really well, and somebody offered to pay me in 2010 because I had grown multiple different businesses and done real well, that somebody offered to pay me. And then I made like such a big impact on their business that like all of a sudden I felt great. Like it filled that part of who I was. And I was like, that's awesome. And then I did it again. And I mean, I've literally had grown men whom you would never even imagine. There's probably a couple names that if I was to mention, you might know, who have cried in front of me because they struggled for so long pouring their heart and soul into their business. And then all of a sudden, just with a little bit of clarity, they were able to get over that hump and achieve even more than they thought was possible. And that release, I mean, literally crying in front of me, for me, like, man, it felt like like everything that I've done, like so worth it. Like when I can make an impact on somebody's life so much that this big hard-nosed dude can't hold back the tears of gratitude, like that's why I do it. Right. I mean, the business version wants me to, it's this whole script bio about like, whatever, make an impact, and here's the vision, and the whole thing at a grand scale. And there's definitely a component of that. But on an emotional level, I love knowing that I can make an impact on somebody's life.
Man, it feels, I mean, you think about that, and so many entrepreneurs struggle. I have a group called Go Wellness where I've mentored, just shy of 1,000 different practitioners, in clinical skills, and we've done some in how to run a practice. And I can tell you that those are some of the most rewarding times that I have as well, where, actually I was just had a doctor hitting me up this morning, like, hey, I've got a patient with Lyme. Here's what I'm thinking on the protocol. And I said, oh yeah, if you layer on this, this, and this to treat the Lyme, your patient's going to get so much better. And so, I'm instantly getting the gratitude text back. And then I love when the doctors circle back and they say, I would have never thought of that strategy. Thank you so much. That's so, with your knowledge, you can help so many people, and it's a multiplier, and that's what you're doing. But if we looked at more, on we'll just call it the logical side, the left side of the brain, what is it that you do that can help people? I know one of the things you do is help people make really good decisions, and it's the decisions I've heard you speak about. It's the decisions that entrepreneurs make that can really be the difference between a good one and a great one. But what are some of the logical ways that you help people make those great decisions?
So we're all where we're at because of the decisions that we've made in our life, and I think for most entrepreneurs and business owners, at least the ones that I've come across, they've gotten to the point in their business where it is right now, mostly because of hard work, word of mouth, and referrals. And they're looking to figure out, what do I need to do to get that edge? Like if you look at F1, I'm a big Formula One fan. My family's big Formula One fan and whatnot. You look at the drivers on the track, getting to 80%, to be a good driver, get to 80%, that's actually pretty easy, right? If you want to take your business and, you want to have a profitable business, you can get to the first 80%, relatively easy. To get from 80% to 96%, now that's a little bit difficult. Now you actually need strategy. You need to be able to make significantly better decisions than the 80% of the people before you. And that's what's going to get you to become top 96% of your entire industry. But you look at like the top 4%, and this is where F1 comes in. And in one of the more recent races, the difference between first place qualifier and third place qualifier came to 5/100ths of a second. That 5/100ths of a second, when you're traveling over 150 miles an hour and you're going several miles across the board, like 5/100ths of a second isn't a matter of, it's not a big change that somebody's made. It's actually accumulation of all these tiny little distinctions, these tiny little advantages that are always adding up into their favor. Now, for me, we take people who are, go all the way through to that 80%. So we predominantly work with 7 and 8 figure companies. I work with a few 9-figure companies too, but 7 and 8 figure companies that have done the 80% of the heavy lifting themselves. Now they want to go, how do I get to 80 to 96%? We go 80 to 96% before they know it, they're at 10 or multiples of 10 million. And they're like, all right, now I want to get all the way to that 100%. And that's when we get them much closer to that many multiples of 8 figures into that 9-figure range.
Got it.
So it's decisions, it's strategy. But if I might actually share a little bit of story on how this came about, would that be okay?
Oh yeah, I would love that. Yeah, because you had a big moment in your life that kind of led to your decision to do things differently. So yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Well, like most entrepreneurs, I was raised with a few different, mottos, the early bird gets a worm, and, hard work pays off. And the secret to success is, work harder than all your competition, whatnot. I took all that to heart. I mean, man, when I say I took that to heart, you'll learn a little bit more about my personality now when I tell you about this story. But when somebody says, all right, early bird, gets a worm, I set my alarm for 3:30 every morning so I wouldn't, quote unquote, oversleep. And I would work every waking hour of the day, 7 days a week, until I couldn't physically keep my eyes open. I might get up in the morning at, say, 12:30 in the morning to go to the bathroom. And I'm like, well, I'm already up. I'm going to start work. I might have went to bed at like 10:30, but got up at 12:30 and said, I'm up. I'm going to go ahead and get to work. And so working hard was my primary strategy. At the time, I was 23 years old or so. I was in over $1 million in debt because I'd never worked for anybody. I've always been an entrepreneur my whole life, but I'm in over $1 million in debt. I had the pressure. I'm more focused on figuring what do I need to do to not only pay back this debt, but create this multi-million-dollar business. And I didn't put much thought into anything else. I didn't put much thought into health. My breakfast consisted of, let's go to Dunkin' Donuts, get a ham, egg, and cheese sandwich, a chocolate cruller, and a hot chocolate. And that was my breakfast. Then for lunch, I would go to the pizza shop, have a couple slices of pizza and a bottle of water, because you don't want to have soda, so it's not healthy for you, right? And then dinner, whatever my grandmother was making. So I'm not sleeping well. I'm not nourishing my body or my mind. I had a really difficult time scheduling meetings anytime before lunchtime because I had such brain fog. I felt like I couldn't make any good decisions regardless.
Mm-hmm.
And I struggled, and it continued to weigh on me over and over again when I looked at some of my competitors who worked far less than I did, but made so much more than I did. And I couldn't understand it. And I always thought somebody had to have a secret. I sent Richard Branson, billionaire entrepreneur, founder of Virgin Airlines, and a whole bunch of, sent his executive assistant a message. And I said, look, you just tell me where Richard's going to be. I will fly anywhere in the world. I will buy him lunch, dinner, whatever it's going to take. All I need is a little bit of time, because I want to know, what is that difference? What is that difference? Because I'm trying everything. I can't figure it out. And it wasn't until that one event where I'm driving home and I could see my house right from the hood of my vehicle. I get this pain. This pain starts creeping up from my lower back and my spine, goes radiating all the way up into my head, right into my brain. And I knew at that point, I'm not making it home today. And before long, I was in the emergency room, and I'm on my back and I'm looking up at the doctor. And he said, you're dying. And I'm like, what? He says, your organs are shutting down. Your organs are shutting down. There's something amiss here. And it was stress. It was no sleep. God, yeah, who would have thought that you can't not have sleep and live a healthy life, right? I mean, but it was no
Go
sleep.
figure.
Yeah, go figure. I mean, right? No sleep, poor nutrition, the stress, all of that, all adding up and is resulting in everything shutting down. My wife picked me up from the hospital after, I was cleared to go, and we're driving home. And she's like, "What are you thinking about?" And I'm like, "I don't know what to do. I'm doing everything that I was told that I needed to do to become successful. And I'm not doing it. And I'm not anywhere closer. So something has to change." And that's when I started making those differences. I figured, and this is so cliche, but I'm going to say it anyway, if I couldn't work harder, I had to work smarter. So I tried to find more ways in which I could get more done with a little bit of time that I had. And then you just do it once, and all of a sudden you get a massive change and a massive change and a massive change, to the point where I didn't realize how different the things we were doing were, until one day I got a knock on my door. And I opened the door. I worked with a big accounting firm out in Boston, and it's the principal of this accounting firm. And I'm up in New Hampshire at the time. And I'm like, "Oh, damn. Like, what's going on?" I'm like, "Hey, how are you?" He goes, "Can I come in?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Comes right in, and he sits down at my breakfast table, and he goes, "All right, what's going on?" I don't understand. "What do you mean, what's going on?" "You paid fair market value for, all your products. You're selling it at fair market value, but you have one of the highest profit margins in the entire industry. I can't figure out for the life of me what the heck you guys are doing." And we were just doing things differently.
Wow.
So again, we talk about the accumulation of the different distinctions that,
Yep.
the different things, it all added up. And then, by 24, I had my first multi-million-dollar business. So
Man,
all
that's
because of, going to the hospital.
you had the crisis where you're literally, I'm sure the doctor was just like, "What is going on? This 23-year-old is having all of his organs shut down." But what's interesting is the sleep deprivation. We can go longer without food than we can go without sleep. The world record without sleep is that there's a Chinese guy that wanted to watch all the World Cups, and so he's like, "I'm not going to fall asleep." And it was like 3 weeks of World Cup, however long that event lasts, 3 or 4 weeks.
Wow.
And so he's chain smoking cigarettes, he's drinking coffee just to stay awake. And then he went into a grand mal seizure, and it killed him about 3 weeks into his experiment. So our body, and we can go 3 weeks without food. If you stay hydrated, you're fine. You can go, people have gone 60 days in these, deprivation states. And, but yeah, no sleep almost killed you. And now you're like a princess when you sleep. You got your little eye pillow. My bed's got to be the right temperature. I hear a little sound. Yeah,
you're right.
It takes me to know one. I'm a princess too. Yeah.
Well, and it's little things too that like you talk about those habits, right? One new habit that you gave me that I've appreciated is you said, "Hey, before you drink your coffee in the morning, if you're still going to have your coffee, before you drink it, like, go for a walk, ground yourself a little bit." And so I started doing that, breathing in the fresh air or whatnot. Like, that was a nice sort of like start to the day. It's the first thing I did. Like this morning, my kids are going, "Where the hell is Dad going?" Like, it's dark out and whatnot, and I'm out the door in my bare feet, to go for a walk.
Nice.
But then, from there, I knew that I had to get my heart pumping and beating. I had to get the blood flowing from the night of just stagnation and whatnot, blood flowing, because if I didn't, the conversations that I'm going to have throughout the day, the level of decision making that I'm going to have is going to be so much different. So I wanted to get some blood flowing, some energy going and whatnot, so I can make better decisions and have better conversations. Because again, I'm not playing the first 80% of the game. Anybody else, that part's easy. Lots of people who do that. I'm not interested in the 96%. I want to be the F1 driver at the end. I heard Tom Brady speak one time, and Tom Brady said he was being interviewed by Tony Robbins, and Tony asked him, "What do you think about work-life balance?" And he said, "Tony, work-life balance is a myth perpetrated by average people. If you want to be the best, you have to be willing put your life out of balance. And at first I'm like, well, whoa, I don't know if I jive with
Hmm.
that. What do you mean? But what he ultimately was talking about is that people think that they have to spend all this time socially, they have to spend all this time this, they have to spend all this time, blah, blah. But he says, if you just focus in on the three most important things to you, be the best at it. You know, for him, it's his, or I say family, but now look what's happening in the news, right? But family, health, and business. But like a business meaning football, but health, he's so particular about his health, he won't put a raisin in his body without tracking it and
Yeah.
understanding the impact of what that has. So, I mean, you got to be willing to do, to do that extra, make the hard decisions, be uncomfortable, create new habits.
Yeah, that's a great analogy because Tom Brady, I mean, you can't argue with the results that he's gotten. And I think he was drafted into the NFL at like number 272 or some, he barely made it in. And now he can't leave. He's just, he's 45 and still, still going for it. So if you look at, someone that maybe you could share a couple stories or, some insights on people that you've been able to help and kind of what would be kind of the ideal person that you would want to work with and help.
Got it. So, it is, most people have gotten to the place in their business where it has just been hard work and word of mouth and referrals, right? And typically what they're doing is they're coming to me asking themselves one of three questions. They're saying, what's it going to take to help my business grow faster? Or some months are feast, some months are famine. How do we bring a little more predictability into our revenue? Or then the third one is the company is just far too dependent on me. How do I scale this thing? I just got off the phone with a client that I've been working with now for, it's going to be about 6 years or so. This guy, when he started working with me, he was doing about $1 million a year and super, super hard worker. But he's like, man, I can feel it. We're starting to hit the ceiling. I need to be doing something differently. I'm just not exactly sure what it is. In jujitsu, a white belt does the exact same training as a black belt. We're all in the same room together. But the difference between the white belt and a black belt, again, comes down to those distinctions. A white belt might not be able to figure out what the heck is going on, why their arm continues to get submitted. And it's the black belt that says it's because your thumb is to the side. If all you did is turn your thumb up, your elbow will lock into its side and it won't be able to attack your arm. But
what?
I mean,
awesome.
but that's a very subtle distinction.
Yeah.
Keep your elbows out when your thumb's down, your elbow's in. Subtle distinction. In this particular case with this business, we're looking for the subtle distinctions.
Thanks for that. My son does jujitsu, and he always gets me in the most weird positions, and so I actually, you just coached me on that. Sorry, keep going. Yeah.
There we go. Perfect. So we look for those subtle distinctions. So we take a look at everything that they're doing now, and we're trying to figure out how do we do more of what's working and less of what's not. And and entrepreneurs are some of the hardest working people in the world. So how do we do it in a way that doesn't put more work on their plate?
Yeah.
And so we were able to take him from $1 million to, I think it was 4 point something in the first year, then 11, then 23, then 46 or something like that million, something like that. I don't know. It's a massive amount of growth, and he's still growing, year after year.
Wow.
And it all comes down to, okay, so in every business is a little bit different. Are they speaking to a niche market? Are they trying to appeal to everybody? Is your business appealing, especially today more than anything, to the discerning consumer? Like the average person is looking at 27 different sources of information before making a buying decision. They're going through this exploration and evaluation. People think if they just put this claim like we're the best and the best value and whatnot, that's going to be enough. And it's not. Like, how are you appealing to that discerning consumer?
Yeah.
And I mean, there's literally hundreds of different like tweaks that can go on within an organization that can take a company from, maybe stagnation to massive growth. I could go a little bit into more detail, but we break it into three buckets. The setup, right? What is that setup? How are you capturing demand? How are you nurturing demand and so forth? How are you creating demand? Then you go into sales. How are you qualifying, converting? How are you reselling these people? What does those systems look like? Then, of course, there's the scaling component. What do the systems look like? What's your team look like? Are people in the right seats? Do you have KPIs? Are you monitoring the KPIs? Does everybody on your team have a particular KPI? As you get those pieces of the puzzle together, everything runs far more seamlessly.
Yeah, it seems like that would be it's a much easier plan of creating some clarity in the lives of everybody in your organization, creating some health, right? And I like how predictability profits. If you look at it from a health perspective, in a business, a business has a health to it too, and every business goes through different life cycles. And I think to have a profitable business, there's so many different things that have to take place, similar to health. I mean, people have to get so many different aspects of their health, and if they look at the right knobs, if they're looking at the right metrics, you can accelerate so much faster. And that's where functional medicine is really fascinating to me, because you go to your doctor and your doctor's like, everything looks good. And it's kind of you just looking at a P&L statement and saying, oh, you're profitable last year, you're fine. It's like, well, actually, that's not true. I mean, you could have got lucky last year, and this year's a completely different scene. There could be something like a pandemic that hits or whatever. But the other thing I wanted to touch on too is even as business get these systems in, then friction hits in, and there's there's emotions, or a lot of people in our community, it's a husband and wife that are working together in a business. And so I wonder if you could share some insights on how those partnerships could keep some type of a harmony at home and in the business.
That's a great question. So my wife and I actually co-founded the first few businesses together. And the first time we started really working together, it was difficult. It was difficult because naturally I tend to be a little bit more intensive, and I just like to take charge. And she was feeling more like an employee than an equal partner. And then that, didn't just, when you're especially a startup entrepreneur, you're working so many hours in the day, that overlaps well into your personal time too, where the dynamic was shifting from lover to now it was, like colleague type of thing. That was really, really difficult to a point where it could have put the kibosh on our relationship. It was tough. So we had to make a decision, and we said, you know what, we're gonna take this part of the business and we're going to make you in charge of this part of the business. You're going to be CEO of this part of the business. And I'm going to take this part of the business, and that's going to be my role. And I'm going to be CEO of this part of the business. I'm not going to tell you how to run yours. You don't tell me how to run mine, but we'll meet in the middle and we'll make decisions together when decisions together have to be made. Cool. And that changed the entire dynamic. But the beautiful thing was, because I understood what she was going through and the stresses that she went through, and she understood what I was going through, at the end of the night, when business was over, we didn't have to talk business. Neither one of us actually wanted to talk about business. So we actually could enjoy each other.
Wow.
And so that was a really, really great decision that we made. And it was great for our relationship, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. But it was having those clear boundaries. You are CEO of this part of the business. I'll be CEO of this part of the business. I respect your decisions. You respect mine. We'll meet in the middle where we need to be, and so be it.
Wow.
And yeah.
I could have used that advice about 5 years ago. 'Cause my wife, she's a commercial real estate agent and a Pilates instructor, and I was opening a clinic in Park City. I guess this was oh, that was 7 years ago. And I was like, you should open this clinic with me, because she was kind of ready to leave her current job, and she was, kind of tired of the politics. And so we decided on that. But just like you said, it got really weird where she felt like she was an employee, and we're starting a clinic and we're trying to make everything go, and it takes a lot of work up front. And so after about a year, we're like, I think we got to make a shift. And so we brought people in to take over what she was doing. But I do miss working with her, because she's she's an 8'7" on the Colby profile. She's an 8'7" and so fact finder follow through, and I'm a 4'2" 9'3", and so I've got all the ideas, and she just wants to build a system and a process that works really well. And I'm like, oh, here's how we could do it even better. And she's like, I just put it in. No. So it was a challenge, but I love the fact that you and your wife separated it and said, hey, well, you do this, I'll do that, and then we'll come together. And it sounds like things were really successful. Now your wife is she's got the hardest job. She's raising your 3 kids.
Yeah. And, I wish we had more of an opportunity. I keep asking her all the time, hey, is there any chance that, we can continue to build the business that I'm working on now together? She just loves what it is that she's doing. But, the kids part is interesting, not from the fact that she does have the hardest job for sure with the kids, because at least my job can end at a certain time. Her job continues over and over again. Right.
Yeah.
But as an entrepreneur, right, one of the things that I've learned over the years is you either become the parent that your kids want to be like, or you become the parent that they don't want to be like. And so there's certain things that everybody who's listening right now have probably seen from their own parents, that they love certain things that their parents have done. And there are other things that the parents have done that they wish they could have changed. And my dad, he worked every waking hour of every day until I was in the 3rd grade. And he would get up and he would go to work before I got out of bed in the morning. And then he would come home after I was already in bed at night. And this happened 7 days a week. And he did that all to provide for the family. So it was all with good intention. And like most entrepreneurs, he felt the only way that he was going to succeed was to put in the hard work. But I do remember in 3rd grade that there was this one time my dad was talking with my mom, and he looked at me and he goes, when did he grow up? And I still remember this. Here I am, it's like, decades and decades later. Because it was such an emotional time for him when he looked at me and he was like, when did he grow up? That was at the point where he decided to make a massive change. And he said, at that point, I'm taking my weekends off. And then after that, he was so, I think, moved by that moment that then he started taking his summers off. And, so when I started my company, I said, what are some of the things now that I'm having a family that are going to be non-negotiable for me? And I'm like, I'm not going to do what my dad did. I did that when it was just my wife and I. But now that I'm having kids, I'm like, I'm not going to do what my dad went through. So I want to make sure that I can have a home office. And I want to make sure that my business is set up so that I can be available at any one of my kids' special moments where they want me to be there, that I'll be there. When my kid learns to walk, that I'm still going to be there. When my kid says his first word, that I'm still going to be there, because I'm only in the room or the floor next door.
Yeah.
And so entrepreneurs, when they build their business, they have the option. Do I want the company that I'm building for me? Or is it going to happen to me? Am I going to start a company and then just be an employee of the company, or I'm going to make the company work for me, for my life? That's really important for entrepreneurs to understand is, if you're in the business now, what changes do you want to make? Because it's never too late to make the changes. or if you're looking to start a business, what are your non-negotiables, and build the
Yeah,
business around that.
man. That's some sage advice there, and so I know as we're coming to the end, I want to give you a couple rapid fire questions, if that's okay.
Please.
Um, biggest business failure.
Cool. God. The hard thing is trying to figure out which one of them. Um, it honestly comes back to being too comfortable and taking my foot off the gas pedal. Growing a business very much is like driving a bus uphill. You take your foot off the gas pedal, you start to slide back down again. It takes a hell of a lot more energy to control it sliding down. I'm sure you know this, like in health, if you're not growing, you're dying. If a business isn't growing, it starts to die, and takes a lot more effort. And anytime I've ever lost massive amounts of money, it's because I got fat and happy and took my foot off the gas pedal.
Wow. What would you say your favorite health hack is? What do you do every single day that moves the needle more than anything?
My favorite, and I'm not just saying this because you're the one who's asked me this question. Actually, I think those peptides give me those little bit of that advantage that, that I'm looking at. So my favorite hack would always be the peptides. But if it was something that was unrelated to the peptides, I know you call me a princess sleeper, but oh man, sleeping with a room at 70 degrees, keeping it cool, full blackout, that temperature control mattress.
Yep.
I mean, you have a good night's sleep, like it sets a tone for the whole rest of the day.
Yeah, really does. I love that. So what's your favorite peptide then? Any favorites so far?
Actually, my favorite, it depends on the and what it is that I'm trying to accomplish at that time. I mean, one of the peptides that we're on now is, I don't even know how to pronounce it, the
melanotan. Yeah.
But the reason why that's a favorite is because I wouldn't be able to go out in the sun and enjoy myself. I'd always have to hide in the shade. It was difficult because, I turned 3 colors. It was, white, red, and purple. And the quality of my life, I love being on the boat. I love doing all this stuff. I didn't understand how much it negatively impacted the quality of my life.
Wow.
Not being able to enjoy the outside when the sun was out, because, I would get sick quick from this too much sun exposure and whatnot. But no, that was a game changer for me. I can literally I was on stage speaking out in Mexico in the hot sun, like all day long.
Yep.
And nothing. It was like, I felt like a champ.
Pretty magical, isn't it? Yeah.
It's really extraordinary.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, this is awesome. And just the final question is, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you and to follow your work closer?
Awesome. Predictableprofits.com is where we have a lot of different resources and so forth. So I'd encourage people to check me out there over at predictableprofits.com. In fact, we have a free business assessment right now on the website where people can go to the website, get a sense for where their business ranks and what their core focus should be on. That's probably the best place. On the website, there's some social handles and whatnot that they can click on, and they can follow us on social media and whatnot. And it's always fun. If they want to connect with me on LinkedIn, just make mention that they heard me on this podcast, and I will accept their connection. So
awesome.
It'll be fun.
I really appreciate that. Well, Charles, thanks so much for being on the show. Everybody, if you enjoyed this show, make sure you send this to your friends, family, your kids, your grandkids, and we will see you guys next week. Charles, thanks again. Look forward to catching up soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye.